Okay, how's that? Okay, good. Well, welcome, everyone. I'm John Mead from A16, and happy to have everyone here tonight. Well, we do this periodically on Wednesday nights here at Helix Brewing, and we're grateful for the folks here at Brewery for allowing us to do this. They just give us their space and say, you do your thing on Wednesday night. It's kind of a fun thing to do, to get together of like-minded people to learn about the outdoors and swap stories and tell lies and all that stuff. Not that you're going to hear any of that tonight, but it's a labor of love for A16, certainly for me. Michael Moriarty is labor of love for him too. He is a Pine Media, and he's going to put this on film. So if you don't pay really close attention to Daniel tonight, in a few weeks we'll have it up on YouTube. Go to his channel, and you can watch it again and over and over and over. So we'll spread the word, throughout the world on that. So thank you, Mike, for doing that. A couple of things that we're going to be doing in the future. We do an annual how to best to prepare for hiking Mount Whitney, and that's happening I think on the 24th of May, another Wednesday night. That's our next presentation. Is it the 22nd? Thank you. All right, good. Thank you. Don't come the 24th. And so Jack Northam, who is highly qualified, he kind of the unofficial ambassador of the mountain, is going to be here with his wife Betsy, and they'll do their presentation. It's always fun and interesting. Another event that we're doing that I'd like you all to know about is for 46 years, Adventure 16, A16 would hold a swap meet event in our parking lot, both in San Diego and Los Angeles. And this year, after a 4 or 5 year break, we're going to bring it back. We don't have the stores to do it in, so we're going to do it in the parking lot right out here. And basically, there's going to be about 40 10 by 10 spaces. And for people who want to sell, they just got to simply register in a process that we're not used to doing, because we used to just, first come, first serve. We have a little smaller space now. So in about 3 weeks, you'll get an email, if you're on our email list, telling you about the details about how to be a seller, and you already know how to be a buyer. But what you'll need to do in order to if you've got some gear that's usable that you'd like to maybe clear out so you can buy some more gear, which is what we always do. You can take part of that. So it's not called the swap meet anymore. It's going to be called the Great Outdoor Gear and Clothing Exchange at Helix Brewing. Probably an acronym in there we could make up, but so that's happening. And so tonight we're here to listen to Daniel. Daniel, I knew I'd do this. Toujours. Daniel approached me at one of our presentations a while back, and he said, "Hey, I got a little student story," and all he had to tell me was the title. And I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. I don't know much more than you guys do, other than what I wrote on our website, because I just got a copy of the book tonight. So I'm as anxious to learn about it as you all are. So with that, I'll let him talk about his journey and where he came from and why he's here tonight. Daniel, welcome.
All right.
Whoa.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, John.
You bet. Break a leg.
All right. Thanks for coming out, everybody. I really appreciate it. Can everyone hear me okay with the microphone? Awesome. Okay. And thanks to everybody that will watch the replay online. I appreciate you being here with us as well. Like many outdoor enthusiasts, I always try to get outside as frequently as I can, and to spend as much time and as many miles on the trail or off trail outside. And I realized that despite thousands of miles of hiking over the years, there were certain ghosts of the wilderness that I had not yet seen. And those consisted of different animals, different artifacts, and bits of history. Testing. Hey. All right, there we go. That sounds better up here now too. So there were different animals, artifacts, and bits of history that had become for me ghosts of the wilderness. They were these items that I knew were out there, and I was so excited about one day seeing, but I hadn't seen despite thousands of miles. So I set a mission for myself as a hiker just to pursue these items and to see what I could find. And I didn't plan on doing it, but at the end I ended up writing a book. And so tonight's presentation will cover some of the stories from that book, and then I'll have some other content that didn't make it in the book, might have been adventures since the book was released, but with a focus on the local areas. And my passion has always been the desert, and Anza Borrego is my home desert, but I also enjoy hiking all throughout the American Southwest. So we'll see some of those scenes tonight. The items that have drawn me to hiking and that have kept me a hiker are as follows. The first one is that for me it allows you to see time in the rocks. And so an example of that is this scene in Split Mountain, Fish Creek Wash. I always try to swap those around. And so many of you may have been out there. This was incredible the first time I saw it, and it's still incredible today. You have these sedimentary kind of mudstone layers that have been deposited, presumably flat, and you know the area out there has had a lot of rising and receding oceans over the millennia. And then these layers have been warped over the course of time. So you can see the time in a single image. And it really, for me, drew my perspective back and allowed me to look into the past. I was fascinated by a scene like this with deformed sedimentary layers. And of course, for California, the state rock is serpentine or serpentine. And I'm going to use a big word early in the speech here, but stay with me. It is an ophiolitic rock or an ophiolite. And everybody knows what that is, but just in case you don't, the ophiolitic rocks are created on the ocean floor as the seafloor spreads and magma comes up. And so most of my photos tonight are of my own, but this one's a public domain image because I thought it showed the serpentine rock so clearly and the twisted layers that you can view about how that ocean floor must have spread and become warped. And much of California was assembled over the millennia from small land masses that collided with the coast and forced up this rock from the ocean floor onto the tops of mountains. So my girlfriend Susie and I, who's here tonight, we did some hiking around the Bay Area, and that's a great place for serpentine because you can see it on the top of Mount Tamalpais or Mount Diablo, a very historic peak for the gold rush. And just looking at a scene like that, it takes you back in time. So that's my first fascination in hiking. Other than that, the silence out in the desert especially is just entrancing. You can listen and you think you hear something, but if you listen more and more, it's just the ringing in your own ears. So this fascinated me and it addicted me right away. One of the first explorations that I did solo in Anza Borrego, I had a moment where I thought I was hallucinating because of the heat, perhaps. And it turned out that I heard some sort of a fairy, almost like a Tinkerbell noise. And I wondered what was going on. But finally I caught the source of the noise, and it was a hummingbird, and the wings were flapping at a very high rate of speed to make this Tinkerbell sound. And it was only in the silence that I was able to hear it. Some of you may have heard the opposite end of the spectrum where the hummingbird flies at a very low rate of speed, and it's like a loud bumblebee that just rips past your head. So hummingbirds make some great sounds, and it's only in the silence that you can hear those. The other item that attracts me is the solitude that you get out in the backcountry and out in the wilderness. And it's not a solitude of escapism, because all your problems, all your anxieties follow you out there. But it's at least an opportunity to get to know yourself better, to become comfortable in your own company, and to hopefully work through some of that we all have. And the flip side to that solitude is the community, the people who are out there pursuing their passion like you are, and the group of like-minded individuals. For me, these things were great draws, and they provided me an opportunity to be creative in pursuing my adventures as part of that community. And then the final item that I have, oh, sorry, I thought I had one more. Oh, of course, the relationship with the plants and the animals around you that you are able to form when you're outside regularly throughout the seasons, seeing the changing of the leaves and the animals. That's something very special. So with all of this passion behind me, I set out on my purpose-driven quest to find these ghosts of the wilderness. And for me, probably the number one ghost is the mountain lion. The cover of the book has a mountain lion, a scorpion, and a pronghorn. And for me, I'd seen evidence of these mountain lions all over the place in their tracks. This is a beautiful, very clear track. You can see in the pad that the bottom of the pad has a ripple pattern on it. And the top of the pad has a ripple pattern as well, although it's a little smaller. So that's very characteristic of a mountain lion print, but also feline prints in general, like maybe a bobcat or even a house cat. The size of this print certainly points to a mountain lion. But the other thing is you can see the toes are teardrop shaped. And if you mentally imagine pulling those toes down into the pad, all of the toes would just barely fit in the pad. And you don't have that with a coyote. The pad's much smaller. So I was so excited to see this very clear, irrefutable mountain lion track. But the animal itself would always elude me. I had two instances where I was walking out on a trail and the trail was clear, and when I came back there was fresh mountain lion scat right in the middle of the trail, and that animal had been there in the intervening moments. I know many times coyotes will conspicuously leave their scat almost like an animal might scent mark to be visible, and so perhaps that mountain lion was taunting me a little bit. So I thought if I really wanted to, if this was really my goal to see a mountain lion, what would I do? And so the first thing that came to mind with all of us would be to go hiking with some raw meat dragging behind you. And okay, maybe I don't want to be on the move. Maybe I should wait for the dawn and the dusk hours and somehow be in a photographer's blind or a tent with the raw meat out there. So whatever it takes. But when I looked into it a little bit, mountain lions prefer to hunt and eat fresh meat. So this was not going to work even if I put my safety at risk and was all in on it. So I started thinking about some nature documentaries and how they'll sometimes use motion-activated cameras. Sometimes hunters will sort of recon an area by putting out motion-activated trail cameras. And I thought, well, I'm going to get a couple trail cameras with enough battery life to last a month, and I'm going to put them out there. So I put them out not far from where the Pacific Crest Trail crosses San Diego County on its way from Mexico to Canada. And I left them. A month later, all I had were some birds flying by and one hiker couple that stuck their tongue out at the camera. I'm just grateful they didn't steal it. So that didn't work too well. And at this point, I was a little frustrated and ready for a different adventure. So I decided to go to a place I love, which is Utah, and pursue another Ghosts of the Wilderness, another group of ghosts. So I spent some time around the remote Maze district of Canyonlands National Park, and also around Capitol Reef National Park, and really enjoyed seeing the area there. here in Anza-Borrego, we'll sometimes have soil crusts. They're called cryptobiotic soil, and they have a great role to play in preventing erosion. They, especially on sandstone surfaces or sandy surfaces, will lock down that rock and prevent erosion. So I have a lot of respect for the cryptobiotic soil in the ecosystem, and I try to be respectful, because if you step on it or disturb it, it can take 50 years for the soil to grow back to the condition that it was in originally. So that's a great ghost right there. It's certainly cryptobiotic. You can't see it with the naked eye. And I thought this photo was beautiful. Utah has a lot of sandstone and a lot of black cryptobiotic soil. So you can see here the contrast with the red Indian paintbrush. And that's what it's called, but there's a group of paintbrush plants that look similar, like the plant was dipped in paint. So you'll find these plants all up and down the Americas, particularly the West Coast, and also in northern Russia and northern Asia. So this plant, to me, speaks to perhaps the leading consensus among scientists that the land bridge between Russia and Alaska at one point might have enabled the transfer of plants and animals in both directions, and probably hominids as well. So I really like that you can see that history if you know how to look at it with the right eyes. All right, this is a ghost of the wilderness of sorts, a very special animal. Can anyone see it? So Utah is famous for its slot canyons, and this is in a slot canyon in Capitol Reef, actually just in the BLM land outside of Capitol Reef National Park. And you can see right here a red spotted toad. Very tiny, maybe a thumbnail size. And you know, deserts are characterized by their lack of water, and so to find an amphibian in the desert is quite something. Of course, the presence of water defines life and carves the canyons, but for a while scientists didn't know where these toads came from, and they thought the theory was they came about from spontaneous generation. Of course, that didn't happen. These toads will just lie in the sand waiting in sort of a dormant state, and they're able to absorb trace amounts of liquid through their skin directly from the sand. And finally, when the water does arrive, they come out, they gather around the vernal, the temporary pools, and they have a very short life cycle, and the eggs hatch very quickly, and they're able to reproduce until they return to the sand for the next time. So this little fella really had an interesting life, and I'd read about them forever. I was so happy to have been able to encounter one of them in Utah. All right. This was another beautiful item that I found in Utah. To me, it looked a little bit like the background, the wallpaper, for an old Mac operating system before the iPhone. They had this sort of wavy line purple background, and I don't know, I used that for a long time. I guess I don't use it anymore, but I felt very attracted to it. This is a petrified ocean floor, and you can look at it and see the ripples, which are the ripples in the sand that were petrified. And we know that historically there was an ocean in this part of Utah. We know also that the ripples are from that ocean because I have some original artwork here. If the ripples were from a river, the river flows in one direction. So you'd have ripples, but they'd sort of be like the bottom ripples. They'd be leaning in one direction with that one directional water flow. Whereas these ripples, if you look at them on the side, they're more like the top. And the tide comes in and the tide goes out, and it creates this very cool little pattern. Go back and show you that again. So I was so happy and recharged from my time in Utah that I thought I would give another try with the cameras. So I went and I gathered my 2 cameras one more time, loaded them up on batteries, and put them out in the greater Santa Ana Mountains region. I had read some information that seemed to indicate that area might be a good spot for mountain lions in Southern California. So I put them out there in a place where they wouldn't be disturbed, and I was very excited and happy about the possibilities to come. So while those cameras were out doing their thing with their 2 months of cumulative footage that I edited down, then I decided I would go to the land of enchantment, New Mexico. And it was a great place. I'd never been there before. I was able to explore. And my journeys took me to Petroglyph National Monument. Many times, petroglyphs and pictographs are in secret locations, so you'll have to search them out many hours, and you might get lucky to come across them. Other places, like Blair Valley here in the Anza Borrego Desert, or in Petroglyph National Monument, have a given site that you can go visit. So this was pretty cool, and I was able to find the one piece of art that I was looking for, which is this famous engraving of a macaw bird. Now, you can see here that this has been pecked or etched into the rock. There's actually a volcanic dark outer surface that's been removed, so you can see the lighter rock underneath. And long ago, there was a mountain at this location, and an eruption nearby had a lava flow that surrounded the mountain in a crescent. And that mountain is now eroded away, but the crescent of erosion-resistant lava remains. And that's what was carved on to make these petroglyphs about 500 or 600 years ago. So not that long ago. And so that is a petroglyph when it's scraped or pecked. And then a pictograph is when it's painted. So keep that in mind. We'll come back to that later. But I looked at this and I loved it. I saw the tail of the macaw bird, which to me looked a little bit like the Zia sun. So the Zia tribe has this symbol, which for better or worse has made its way onto the New Mexico state flag with a bit of controversy. And you can see the 4 lines of the tail very much look like the 4 lines that extend out from this star in each direction. So perhaps a tribal member had that in mind when they were etching the petroglyph. And it wasn't until I got home that I saw what the other gibberish was. I just thought it was scrapings, who knows what it was. I think it's a bird in a cage. And if that's so, we know there were never macaws in New Mexico. And this seems to point to a trade with Central or South America of macaw birds in a cage. Very cool, very cool. I didn't read that anywhere. I just kind of saw it with my own eyes and put it together. But it reminded me of a parrot and a variety of parrots that we have here in San Diego, which are in the macaw's family. We have parrots from Central and South America that have set up residence in some of the non-native decorative trees that we have here. And they'll eat the flowers, the fruits and the nuts and live in them. They're actually doing better here than they are in their original territory in most cases. And you can also find parrots like that in parts of Los Angeles. So it's incredible. And who knows where these birds came from. We're in proximity to the border, and maybe they were accidentally or inadvertently or intentionally released, and they found a home for themselves here. So that's pretty cool. So I really enjoyed my trip to New Mexico, and I came back, and when it was time, a month later, I went out on the trail to find my 2 cameras. And I retrieved them. I was on my way back to the car, and I met a woman from a local charitable foundation. She had spent a 50-year career almost every day outside looking for and working with mountain lions, doing nest counts of various birds, and all sorts of neat conservation work. And so I asked her, in 50 years, how many mountain lions have you personally seen? And she said 5. Every day for 50 years. So I thought, these are some rare ghosts of the forest indeed. And I didn't know what I would have on my camera roll, so to speak, or the SD cards when I got home. But I dove right in and I started looking, and the first thing I saw was this gray fox. I was worried I was going to say silver fox, but this is indeed a gray fox. And what we're about to see is a short video of the fox scent marking with a gland on the bottom of the chin. It looks very odd. So that little guy, I was really happy to see the gray fox right away, and it was way better already than the bird and the tourist couple, the hiker couple. So I was feeling good, you know. And many of us take for granted animals like deer, you know, they're kind of mundane, or we grew up with them or whatever. But the next one, I saw this beautiful deer. I think it's a mule deer, but you can see it's keeping very alert. It's watching. The ears are flopping back and forth. This deer knows there are predators out there, and good for it. It's watching itself. It's staying careful. So this was great. Yeah.
Forgive me for interrupting. Where was this camera again?
So this was in what I'm calling the greater Santa Ana mountain region, because where you can put out trail cams is a little bit restricted in some areas, not so much in others. So if you're interested in doing this, look up the land rules for your particular area before doing it, please. Yeah. So some great views in the daytime here. So I was going through the first camera, and this was all the one location. There were some other photos and videos of the fox and various deer as well. And then I was coming through and I saw this. And I don't know about you, but that tail, the shape, looked very familiar to me. And I was excited. I thought, this is a mountain lion. And if this is all I have, then it's worth it. So the motion-activated camera was a little slow, unfortunately. I missed the head and the front body, but here we go. Watch this. And it's gone, just like that. But here's a still frame so we can enjoy it for a few more moments. So you can sort of see the end of the tail. Oftentimes the end of the tail is a little dark. It's maybe a bit washed out in the night here with the LEDs strobe lighting it. But this was great. I was so overjoyed, and I started going through the second camera, just satisfied already. I saw some other deer on that camera, and one of my friends mentioned, Aaron said, oh, it sort of looks like this deer is watching out for a mountain lion. He's looking, both sides of the shoulders and feeling really lucky not to have been eaten so far. And I thought that was pretty cool. But I really had my heart jump out of my chest when this guy walked by. Oop, sorry, spoiler alert. Let me go back and play that one more time for you. There we go. So I have a still photo for us to enjoy. One of the things that I was really excited about is having captured a video of a lion without a radio tracker collar on. Many times they're caught by conservationists or scientists, and in order to track the population, they have a radio collar. But this lion was unknown to science, and I felt really good about that. So camera was a little bit high. Perhaps I'll have to viewfind a bit better on the next time. But I felt so good, and my mission was accomplished for this particular ghost of the wilderness. And as we all know, you can enjoy the moment, but something about this passion drove me onward. And so before I knew it, I was at Carrizo Plain National Monument. This is a great place for wildflowers and to see the California poppies. It's between Bakersfield and San Luis Obispo, more or less. Kind of oil country. There are a lot of oil derricks pumping up and down on the drive out there between the Central Valley farm fields. And one of the things I was looking for was the Tule elk. So elk by themselves are known as the ghosts of the forest by many hunters because of their elusiveness, but Tule elk are even rarer than that. Tule elk are only found in California, and they played a big role in supporting those who came here for the gold rush because they were killed off for their meat, for their tallow to make soap and candles, and for their hide. And so the population was virtually extinct, and it wasn't until a small group of them were found in a dried swamp near Bakersfield that they were able to be reintroduced throughout the state. And so every single Tule elk you see came from that one herd in Bakersfield. There's some population genetic diversity problems, as you might understand. Also, typically a single male will have a harem, and so I was able to catch one of those. I was scanning the horizon with my binoculars, and you can see the male here on the right side of the image with the antlers as you're viewing. So that was very exciting, and I was so grateful and happy to see this important part of California history and gold rush history. The main reason that I was at Carrizo Plain National Monument, however, was that I had obtained a permit to go to an area called Painted Rock. Painted Rock is a giant sandstone monolith that the Chumash people had painted about 3,500 years ago. And it's multicolored and it's beautiful. This is a pictograph, not a petroglyph. So I was able to get access to the area and did some exploring. And I found this kind of star panel, and it's beautiful. You can still see perhaps a little foot here coming out from a main character. But there's also been a lot of damage and a lot of graffiti. I think a lot of this was intentional. You can even see some initials that someone has carved with a date 7/5/25. And I wondered, was that 1925? Was that 1825? This thing's been around for 3,500 years. And so once I got home, I did some research, and I was able to find a book that was in the public domain. It was called The Petroglyphs of California and Adjoining States. And it was published in 1929, but its content came from the year 1916. So I thought, if that's true, and if I can find a photo, I can unravel this mystery just a little bit. And so the ghosts came alive in a way. I found an old photographic panel, not film, but a photographic plate that had almost taken the very same angle. So you can see here the long foot. You can see some of the little ripple triangles coming up. And in my photo, you can also see the long foot and the ripple triangles coming up. And you can see in the older photo, we have a beautiful circular area which someone shot out or perhaps tried to scrape out and take home with them. And so this ruins it for everyone. Yeah. Oh, let's see. This was, I kind of climbed up on a rock ledge over here to get this photo. It was probably the width of this back room. Yeah, it's pretty big panel. So someone took a lot of effort to scrape this off. And for somebody to put their initials on it, this is crazy. So the photos were supposedly from 1916, and we don't see their initials here, so that would have indicated 1925 as the date of the vandalism, but the book said it was painted on granite, which it was definitely on sandstone. So I felt like there could have been some opportunities for error. And out of a weird obsession, I went a little deeper, and I said, well, when was the first photograph? Well, the most recent photograph, or the oldest photograph that we have, is from 1826, and it's just a scene in France. So any photo that we have is going to be after 1825. So this one is definitely after that date. So the initials were 1925. Mystery solved. Now we need to find the person. So it was really interesting. Here, I'll show you the difference one more time. And this was a great book. I was glad it was now in the public domain because of time passing. And I looked around, of course, this site and spent a lot of time. The Chumash people are on the Channel Islands of California. And so I was really happy to see this, which appears to be a boat, maybe a little canoe or something that perhaps they traveled between the mainland and these islands. So that was very exciting and special to find. We think of petroglyphs as something you just can't distinguish. Who knows what they were doing back then? Even the descendants of these people many times have no idea. But I think this was a boat, and I think this is how they got around from the mainland to the islands. So closer to home, we have Blair Valley, and this is one of those petroglyphs in Anza Borrego, which is a known location. So I was happy to see that this book had some photographic plate images of this famous rock from the pictograph trail. And it had a few different images, actually, a few different angles. So you can see it was looking pretty good back then in 1916. And here's my photo from more recent years. It really hasn't changed that much. It hasn't degraded as much as the Chumash artwork, which is encouraging to see. This is a photo that I had taken in my pursuit. After the animals, I pursued more and more the rock art. And one of the famous examples of rock art from this area is a cave which is known as the Blue Sun Shaman Cave. It's a secret one. Nobody knows where it is. You can't just go to a guide and find it. So I had to search for it a bit. But when I found it, the main panel is beautiful. It has a blue sun. I encourage you to look it up. This is a side panel, and it's very smudged and maybe degraded. So I found a program called D-Stretch, which was originally used for aerial reconnaissance photos and clarifying our spy missions. And it has a great application on rock art, because if I take this photo and run it through D-Stretch, you can see there's some darker red petroglyphs, or pictographs in this case, which have perhaps been painted over an older orange set. And so this happens all the time in human two-dimensional art. There's even a word for it called a palimpsest. And so this was painted over, and this was a Native American palimpsest. And the program was able to reveal the past. This was another pictograph from that same site, and it's in pretty good condition, but if you run it through the program, it highlights the distinctions even more. And this might be a spider or a scorpion, but it also might be a skeleton. And there's another site, it's going to rain this weekend, but I'm hoping to go with a friend and check it out, that has some skeleton petroglyphs, pictographs, right near an area where they found cremated remains. So perhaps these are skeletons, and perhaps there was some sort of funerary distinction that was being done, or a memorial by these shaman. These are the Kumeyaay people, by the way. Most of our San Diego County is covered by the Kumeyaay tribe, certainly in the southern part. And then the Kuya tribe would be more toward the north and into Riverside. So it's very special to connect with these pieces of artwork so many years later and see the ghost of the forest, ghost of the wilderness. So I'll keep it here for a moment. Another legend that is so popular in so many desert areas, and certainly here in Anza Borrego, is the lost ship of the desert. And this comes in so many flavors and varieties. Some people claim to have found a Viking ship in the canyons of Anza Borrego. But the most popular version of this story is that there was a Spaniard, perhaps a conquistador, named Juan de Iturbey. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he commanded a galleon ship up the Gulf of California and supposedly was finding pearls before he went into the Colorado River and into Lake Quilla, which is at the site of today's Salton Sea. The lake has receded and come back many times over the years, and the legend has it that he got stuck up on a sandbar and was forced to retreat and allegedly made a pictograph or petroglyph inscription to commemorate that retreat. However, these legends and mysteries of the desert are exciting. To me, the truth is even more exciting. And if I look into it, it appears that this story, Juan de Iturbey was an actual person and actually had a voyage in the Gulf of California for pearls in 1615. The problem is Lake Quilla was not existing at that time. And it turns out that the first instance of this story with Juan de Iturbey was in a novel. It was called Journey of the Flame, published in 1933. So I don't think that happened, but there is a pictograph, a petroglyph, I keep using the wrong word, and my girlfriend Susie and I took a difficult hike to find this thing, and it was off trail, and it took a lot of navigation and scrambling, but we found it. And the Maritime Museum of San Diego has had an exhibit on this, and they theorized that this was a native commemoration of Cabrillo landing the San Salvador ship in San Diego Harbor for the first time. And to me it makes sense because the San Salvador was the first main big ship, and you can sort of see maybe some a mast or some sails, maybe even some oars here. Cabrillo also traveled with a second large ship, perhaps over here. We might see an anchor right here. And then there's maybe a third smaller ship, which Cabrillo also traveled with up there. And there's some stick figures in the mix. So this was actually pecked away and into granite, I believe, or a metamorphic rock, igneous rock of some kind. And it was such a great find. And to think that this might have been a depiction of Cabrillo is pretty great. Let's see. I thought there was something else I wanted to say about that.
Somewhere from the coast?
So this is definitely into Borrego. This is far inland, but many of the Kumeyaay people would trade and have a coastal tribe and the mountain tribe and the desert tribe. So I think this is probably it. It could also be some sort of a shamanic vision. A lot of the Kumeyaay people consumed datura or jimson weed. And don't do it if you're looking for a thrill, because the difference between psychedelic and lethal is very small on this. But I think they knew what they were doing. So the last little legend that I have for you is a more modern piece of history. And many of us might have heard of the mountain man, Peg Leg Smith. And this guy was a crazy man. He claimed to have found some gold, maybe in Anza Borrego, maybe in the Mojave, and he had 3 nuggets which were coated in black, some black substance. But as happens with gold finds, he couldn't find it again, he lost it, and so he spent his life selling maps to the gold that he didn't know where it existed, and leading people on guides, and no one ever found this gold. So today in Anza Borrego, there's a monument. It's a stack of rocks about this tall, maybe taller. And it's a sign. It says, if you looked for Peg Leg Smith's gold in vain, throw a rock on the pile. And I did so. So this guy, he had a lot of tall tales. And the other way he's commemorated is with an annual liars contest in Anza Borrego. And you tell the tallest tale you can imagine, and the worst one gets a prize. So when I heard that perhaps there was a legitimate inscription made by Peg Leg Smith in the Old Woman Mountains, I went for it. And it took me 2 trips up there. The Old Woman Mountains are northeast of Joshua Tree, just south of the Mojave National Preserve. It's a very tough place to get to. You can go 35 miles off-road from the south, or you can go about 15 miles from the north. They're very rocky, off-camber kind of trails. And I thought the north route would be good, but it turns out Route 66 to get to the off-road area, the dirt area, had a ton of bridges washed out. So that wasn't a great option, unfortunately. But after 2 trips in the Old Woman Mountains wilderness, I was able to finally find this rock. It's way up there. It's pretty big. And I had to block out the sun just because of the time of day in the corner to hopefully get a better exposure. So I scrambled up on another rock, and I was able to maybe show you the inscription a little bit better. This area is known as Sunflower Springs today, but it also is known as Azalea Springs. And it turns out that Peg Leg Smith had a daughter named Zalia. So perhaps he was responsible for naming it Azalea Springs. And here it says Zalia Springs, Peg Leg Smith, and it has 1854 as the date. So I was so happy to find this. All of the ghosts of the wilderness had come my way, animals, rock art, and other pieces of history. So it felt good to connect. It felt good to connect indeed. And for me, I think that seeing things directly myself in the backcountry without a narrative placed over it, without third-party interpretation, has been so healthy and so good for me. It certainly deepened my relationship with the natural world. And it's created something for me in my life that is missing so many times in the modern world. There is a band called the infamous String Dusters, and they have a song called Down from the Mountain. And it's a great song, great lyrics. For the most part, I love it. It starts out, if you'll allow, that living on this level ground is like a flatline heartbeat all around. The air is thick like black clay mud, and rain clouds cover up the sun. Man, it doesn't sound good. Just like this past weekend. But way up high is like a dream, where the snow it falls and the sun it beams. Craggy rock and rocky spires tend to light my heart on fire. So I love that. As an adventurer, that's a great song. Later on, they talk about a lyric which says, "As we scavenge, fight, and kill, the mountain stands and always will." Believe it or not, that's the part I don't like. Because mountains might be symbols of permanence and comforting for us. But as we saw in New Mexico, mountains erode away totally. And as you're looking into these rocks, they change. And to see those with your own eyes, without a narrative of mountains being permanent, is a very special experience to me. There is an author and a geologist named John McPhee that has a great series of books about the geology out here. And he likes to talk about how Mount Everest, the highest mountain of them all, its peak is made of marine limestone. So limestone is often formed when creatures die in the sea and they fall down, their shells drift down, and the calcite eventually forms a rock. And so that happened over such a long period of time in the Indian Ocean, and then the plate of India came and slammed into Asia and lifted the Himalayas to make the tallest mountain range that we have, and that's Mount Everest, marine limestone. So hearing that sends a chill down my spine. And to look at things as they are like that makes you feel very small and very humble. And I think that's a great place to start from when we're relating to the world. Man. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming out tonight. I'll answer a few questions right now, and then as a group, we can discuss some things. Afterwards, if you'd like to meet one-on-one up here, I'll be hanging around. I do have copies of my book in paperback for $10 discounted, cash only tonight, if you'd like. And otherwise, it's available on Amazon in paperback or Kindle or wherever books are sold. So thanks so much for your attention tonight.
Daniel, can you tell us a little bit about your background? And are you a San Diego native? And just a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, I've been out here almost 13 years now, and San Diego's changed a lot in that amount of time. So for those of you who have been out here even longer, I imagine it's changed even more. So I came from the Midwest originally, and this book has a subtitle of an everyday guy's search for these ghosts of the wilderness. And so I have my day job, which I love and I'm passionate about, and I feel like I'm doing some good, but I pursue these adventures as another passion of mine on the nights, weekends, and holidays, and whenever I can. So I've become a bit of an amateur everything that we've talked about today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what was your educational background? Is it biology or?
No, actually, I have a computer background, and then I just came upon this through my own independent study. And I mean, I'd love something like a junior ranger badge or something someday. That'd make me feel really good. So I read a lot. I over 100 books a year, and I just pursue these passions, and you learn a lot very quickly that way. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think on the one that was from 1925 with the damage?
Yeah.
What do you think the color was created from? How does that color get there, and how did it persist for 100 years?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. I was so curious about that too. Here in the Anza Borrego Desert, you'll normally find things called morteros. And so here the Kumeyaay people will grind up their food, even like rats that they would catch, bone and all, and meat into sort of a meat paste that they would eat. And so it leaves these neat indentations in the rock. So I saw some indentations there at the Painted Rock area, but they were a little more shallow. And I read up, and there's some theories that maybe those were sort of the painter's palette, where these pigments, these natural pigments from animals, from plants, were collected. And perhaps there was even a trade regionally for valued natural pigments. It seemed like they would use just very basic materials, sometimes spit or human blood as a binder for these natural pigments. And yet here we are, thousands of years later, and they've existed through the rain and the heat and the sun. So it's incredible, and it's a little baffling. But this is a good reason not to touch them if you ever come upon them, so that they'll stay in good condition, as good a condition as they can be. Yeah. I don't think I have, no. Tom Ketchum Canyon? I'd love that. Yeah, thank you. That's in eastern Arizona? Southeast. All right. Yeah, thanks. I'm always waiting on leads. That's how you find these things. I don't see so much in books. There are some great books, and many of them are out of print, but are available in the local city library system. But they don't tell you where they are, even like the canyon name or anything. But if I can get a canyon name or even a photo of the region, maybe a wide view, I can match that up, even with Google Earth kind of 3D viewing it in advance, or just walk the whole canyon until you find it. Some of the locals are so happy to talk to you, others not so much. I think it depends on the person. I've also noticed that some people out there really want to have that alone time, and others would like to engage. So I think it's just whomever you run into and their attitude. Oh, let's see. So I'm looking for those skeleton pictographs that I had mentioned. I think that'll be coming up soon. And then there is some military history of Anza Borrego. I've actually not told anybody this, so this is the first announcement. They had to train a huge number of troops for World War II, and the Anza Borrego Desert was used for that. They had rake stations, so they'd have these desert airstrips, and the planes would take off, sometimes towing targets behind them for dogfight practice, which sounds very dangerous. sometimes they drop bombs on a target, and then there would be people with sighting sticks called rakes, and they would triangulate how accurate the pilot had been. And so I think I found some ruins of those rakes on satellite imagery, so I'll have to go check it out. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for your great questions, and I really appreciate it.
Nicely done.
All right.
Daniel, your passion comes through loud and clear, and thank you for sharing that passion tonight so well.
Thanks
you
so much.
Well, everyone, thank you. The Helix is open for another hour brewing, and so and hope to see you here on Monday the 22nd. Very good.